The musket was the primary weapon in the Revolutionary War. When the musket was first introduced, this gave the battle a whole new look as hand-to-hand combat was lessened. During this time, muskets often assembled from parts that were readily available. Sometimes this meant that parts had to be mixed and matched between muskets to keep them in good working order. The flintlock musket was one of the most important muskets. It was made with a much more rugged design, which was made for battle rather than hunting. This gun was a long gun that weighed 9 pounds, which was 5 feet in total. For close combat, a bayonet was added unto the end, which was a quite necessary thing in those times. During battles, muskets were not always accurate, and because they took so long to load in between shots, the enemies could advance, not giving enough time to get out another shot. The bayonet helped to give the soldier another weapon to work with once the enemy got too close. The most common weapon was the smooth-bore flintlock musket, which had a large caliber. Muskets could be fired as fast as every 15 seconds or 45 shots per minute. It took a sense of timing to be able to drive a charge home while the enemy was reloading and unable to fire and break up your lines. Early in the war, the Americans had a shortage of bayonets. When France joined the war, they supplied muskets with bayonets and other accoutrements, uniforms, cartridge boxes, etc., alleviating the Americans' shortage of arms and bayonets. The French provided 100,000 muskets and bayonets during the war. Muskets used in the Revolutionary War included the Brown Bess, the Charleville, and Kentucky long rifle. The muskets changed the face of the war and paved the way for even greater technology in firearms and weapons.
The pistol used primarily as a secondary weapon by soldiers. The pistol was considered very inaccurate and was more a personal weapon. Unfortunately, a variety of Revolutionary War weapons were in very short supply. Because of this, many of the soldiers would bring their own Revolutionary War pistols and various other items from their own homes. To use them to fight with, it was also upon them to provide and carry other necessary items that were used, such as cartridge boxes, shot molds, and tinder lighters. The shots that rang out from the soldiers' pistols were very inefficient. Even though soldiers that were known as being great with pistols were still limited to 2 or 3 rounds per minute. This was largely due to the fact that each soldier would have to individually load each shell that went into the pistol or musket. Even after the ammunition was loaded into their weapons, they would often not be able to hit their targets as hoped. The accuracy of these guns was terrible, even in historical context. When they had shots that ranged from 15 or less, they were a little more accurate. Flintlock pistols from the Revolutionary War were used primarily for personal purposes. That said, many of the officers and men of higher stature would often carry pistols. Pistols were also used as dueling weapons during the early American history. Duels relied on the inaccuracy of these flintlock pistols for survival of both participants. Another item used in the Revolutionary War was swords and sabers. Most Revolutionary War era swords were made in Europe. There were some swords made in America, but that did not become common until after the American Revolution. The primary source for officers' swords were Germany, France, Great Britain, and Belgium. Used mostly by officers, Revolutionary swords were often ornamental in nature and decorated with precious materials.
A powder horn was a device used to carry black powder to load in the old muzzle-loading firearms of the 17th and 18th century. A powder horn is made from a cow's horn. A cow horn is hollowed out and the walls are sanded on the inside and outside. The pointed tip is cut off and a hole is drilled through the end in the hollow horn. A wooden base is made to plug the large end, and small brass rods are nailed around the edge to hold it in place. A wooden plug is made for the tip. Sometimes the tip was cut off and is shaped and sanded to be used as a powder measure, so the soldiers could measure out the correct amount of powder for each load. The old flintlock rifle had to use one powder to load in the barrel and a fine powder for the frizzen pan of the firing mechanism. This required two types of powder, so many carried two types of horns. The fine powder was carried in a smaller powder horn, some only 5 or 6 inches in length. Powder horns were common usage in the American Revolutionary War. However, many soldiers pre-measured the powder for each round and wrapped it in paper with a lead bullet. This was called a paper cartridge. The armies used paper cartridges to speed the loading process and reduce the risk of loose powder being around sparking guns. To load, a soldier opened his cartridge box, grabbed the cartridge, bit off the end to expose the powder, and poured a small amount into the pan of the lock. Closed the pan, dropped the cartridge into the barrel, removed his rammer, rammed it home, returned his rammer, and then made ready to shoot by cocking his lock. Since the ball is undersized and the paper cartridge is just dropped in the barrel, the ball might come out spinning as the gases behind it escaped unevenly. It might spin in any direction and fly like a curveball or be thrown slightly to any side. After 75 yards, it was very hard for a soldier to deliberately hit a man-sized target.
The Redcoats and Americans.
Get